So last week we started this series on Hanukkah. We're getting started early, but now we're almost at Rosh Chodesh Kislev, so now it doesn't feel quite as early to start talking about Hanukkah. But last week we started this with the Sifsei Chaim, Rav Chaim Friedlander, and we saw where, just a quick recap, he was sort of breaking down the idea between a nes nistar and a nes nigla. And regarding Hanukkah, we seem to be very focused. The Gemara that we saw in Shabbos talks about the nes of the Shemen, specifically not the nisim that happened in the war against the Greeks. So it seems to be focused on the nes that was more public, right, of the oil. And we saw the Ramban last week that was talking about the fact that a nes nister, we don't see examples of nisim, hidden miracles, in the Chumash as Hashem was performing miracles for the Avos. When Abraham was saved from the Kivshana Eish or Kazdim, that's not mentioned specifically in the Chumash. Yaakov crossing the Yarden using his staff to split it isn't mentioned explicitly. These are only mentioned by Chazal. And the Ramban says that the reason for that is that Hashem performs miracles for tzaddikim in order to enable them to do what they need to do, or in order to stop Rishonim from doing what they want to do and what Hashem doesn't want them to do. But those aren't things that we learn from. We learn from the open miracles, like what we see, in the times of Yetzias Mitzrayim. So at this point, we're going to keep going forward. We'll try to cover more ground because, as I was saying last week, at least to Rick, was that the Sifsei Chaim has a lot of pages on this. So we want to just see over the next few weeks how far we can get into this. So without further ado, Chanukah. So Kosev Ramban v'imtza'eu ish v'hinei toeh b'sodeh yaricha kosev b'zeh la'agid ki sibos rabos bo elav shahaya roi lachzor lo l'diyanu ki agzer emes v'charitzos sheker. So the Ramban is talking about here when Yosef is on the way to meet his brothers, right? He doesn't realize it, but he's about to get sold down to Mitzrayim. And it says that he meets a man that happened to be wandering around in the fields, right? And then he asks this person, "Have you seen my brothers?" And he points Yosef in the right direction in order for him to find his brothers, and then ultimately to get sold. And the Ramban says that this whole episode is to teach us that the Gezer is emes and the Charitzos, that in anything that we try to do to sort of change how things should go, that's sheker. It's not going to happen. It says, there's this person here, there's a guide that Yosef runs into that doesn't necessarily know why he's there or what his what's ultimately going to happen. This is why Chazal say that these are malachim. This is not, this wasn't random, this person standing in the field. And it's going to teach us that Hashem has the ability to, and what Hashem wants to do, his plans are the ones that are going to, ultimately are going to be fulfilled. And we can learn this from the episode of Mechiras Yosef, Kedivri Chazal, Heim Omer V'Nergeu, V'Ruach HaKodesh Omer, Nira Ma Yiyu Chalamosav. And the brothers say, here comes this Bala Chalamos, and we'll see what's going to happen with his dreams. So how do we understand that puzzle? What are the brothers saying? So Chazal say that this is their attempt at thwarting Yosef. Nira Davar Mi Yakum, Oshacham Shali. Who's gonna come out correct? You, Yosef, or us with Yosef with your dreams? They sold him specifically to distance the ability to completely take it out of the possibility, the realm of possibility that his dreams should be fulfilled. Ki betuchim hayu shabiyoso eved bevade lo yimloch alayim. If he's a slave, he certainly isn't going to end up being, ruling over them. V'ine davka ayidei mechirasam b'yatzu heim atzmam sheliv machrir b'shtar shalus hadvarim she'viu l'chkach sheYosef yimloch alayim. And it's actually their own actions that lead to Yosef's dream being fulfilled. Ki gzeira is Hashem emes. And that's what the Ramban is telling us, that we can't play games with what Hashem wants us to do. That, we end up just sort of playing into, we see the brothers just played into Hashem's hand, as it were. And that's how the Gezer became emes. The charitzas, but all the activities we do, we start with Adam sheker. That doesn't end up doing anything. Okay.
Isn't there a story about the angel of death who wants to take somebody, and he goes running to a city where people don't die, they live forever. And then as he goes outside the gate, the angel of death takes him, and he says, I had to take you there, and it was because you ran there that I was able to get you, sort of thing.
I don't know. I'm not familiar, but I mean, it sounds...
same kind of thing. He's trying to escape the din, and he gets it by going there.
Yeah, in the same part of this. Right. Okay, so Me'emor Nilmad, She'in la harbos be'charitzu v'shtalus, Yosef me'hechrach letzis yidei chova. And he says that what we should learn from this is that all the hishtadlus that we do, we should try and only do as much hishtadlus as is truly necessary. He says that's only true when we're talking about, the worldly, mundane activities that we do, that we should only do as much hishtadlus as necessary. But when it comes to doing a mitzvah, adarabba v'adarabba, we should go to the ends of the earth in order to fulfill mitzvahs. I am going to try and move a little bit faster, just because there is a lot of material, a lot of content, and I want to keep moving forward. So go a little bit faster than we have in the past, but we want to, we'll try to hit the main points, and obviously ask questions if I'm going too fast. But then he says, Kasav Harambam, B'chein ir b'bayis sheni, Kishagavra Malchus Yavan Harisha. This is what happened in the Second Temple in the Bayesheni, when the evil Greeks were in charge. The Gazir Shemaros Gedolos Mishunos Yisrael Labed Adas, and they made these decrees that were specifically trying to destroy our religion. The Gazir Aleim Chila Shabbos Lahaver Bris Milah. They didn't allow us to keep Shabbos. They're trying to get rid of Bris Milah. They completely desecrated the Beis Hamikdash and made the avoda in the Beis Hamikdash impossible. And the Medrash says that we all had to write out that we have no chilek in Hashem. And these gezeros were going on for 52 years. The Bach says, why did this happen? Why were they were so difficult? These decrees were so terrible, and they went on for so long. Why didn't Hashem save us before? Why did it take 52 years? And he said the problem was that with Hanukah, what we learn out is just how much we were, we weren't doing the avoda. We were the avodas Hashem was something that we were not putting any effort into. And that's why the Gezerah came out, to be mevato the avoda that we didn't want to spend our time and effort on. That became mevato by the Greeks. Like the Brisa says that this is that the tamid, the carbon tamid was nullified. Mitzvah achas yesh biyadan. He says that if there's one more thing that was mevato, everything would be lost. What was that one more thing? The lighting of the menorah in the Beis Hamikdash. So that was the one thing that was keeping us afloat, keeping us going. The Greeks knew this, so what did they do? They went and they desecrated the Beis Hamikdash in order to destroy that one mitzvah that we still have going of the Ner Tamid. So Kol Yosef La'adam is Chazik Lishtadel L'Kayim Mitzvah Shechiyuvim Pru Mizman Lezman. He says something really insightful, I think, is not that he needs my approbation, but it's just, when I was reading this, it just seems so insightful that he says it's so easy for us to be strong when it comes to the mitzvahs that only come from time to time. And I was thinking about this, like, everybody has, everyone strives for things like, Leil Pesach, right? The Seder Pesach. That's one of those things that you could be distance away from Yiddishkeit, but that seems to be one of those things that continues, right? It's just an example I was thinking about. But he says that in general, like the things that only come from time to time, those are easier for us to be strong and to maintain. Me'asher mitzvahs tamidiyos, much more so than the things that we have to be doing on a consistent and a constant basis. He's rashlis b'mitzvahs atamid v'menorah tmidius, and that's exactly what the problem was. That we were not very strong when it came to things like the ner tamid and the korban tamid. Meidach mor chiyuv tmidi shel mitzvahs elu al chashivusan, and what we learn from this is just the chashivas, the importance of all those little things, I guess seemingly, little things that we do on a constant daily basis. And that's why the Rishonim, they sensed this, they understood this, and that's exactly why they were mevatel them. And once they were choser b'tshuva, they were moser nefesh on the avoda. Boser shasha evinu ki aleim yishtadlus atzuma al mesiras nefesh kadei letakin chetus rashlus azeh oshem Hashem ayidei kohanim ovdi avoda beveis Hashem. Okay, nasa hanes gamkim beneris tachas asher heru nafshem lamus al kiyum avoda, and that's as soon as the Chashmonayim were most in efforts to try and save the Beis Hamikdash and be able to get back into it. That's when Hashem saved us, and that's also why the miracle and the avoda for us in Hanukah. There aren't so many mitzvahs in Hanukah. The one mitzvah we have is to light the menorah. Kevin shemasru nafshem al avoda nased lahem nes bal mator shonam yuchedes. So this was a very specific and a very pointed miracle. Everything else was all about helping us. All the small miracles that happened during the Milchama, and they may not have been small, right? Fighting the Greeks could not have been a simple matter for the Chashmonayim and all the others. But on top of that, we have this very, very specific and very interesting mitzvah or nace of that the Shemin that lasted 8 days. Everything else was just to save Yisrael. And that's why when they were koveh the mitzvah, it was the mitzvahs to lahalo, lahodos, that in the davening that we do, and we say al anisim, that is avodah shebelev. That's where we see that all the efforts that we put in when it's regarding mitzvahs, that isn't sheker. That's not for naught. That will always come out. That's something that we always have to strive for, to do more and more. And it's not, but we still have to realize that it's not the hishtadlus that comes out and saves us in the end, but it's the hishtadlus that then leads to our, getting help from Shemayim. Right? There's a famous Gemara that says Yagati umatsase, that when you hear somebody say, learning Torah, Yagati umatsase, right? I put in all of the effort and I found it, and that you can believe. He says, "V'temua v'chi shayach le'ega limsa mitzia v'hari mitzia mizdemenis behesach hadas b'li yagia." The two words don't go together. Yegia means I put in a whole bunch of effort and time and energy and everything else in order to get this thing. A mitzia is a mitzia. It's something you find. You happen to be walking down the street and you see $100 bill, right? That's a mitzia. You didn't put in the time and effort. You weren't going around all the different blocks looking for $100 bill, right? It's just that you happen to be walking and you happen to run into it. So what does it mean? Yagatu matzasi. He says, we have to put our efforts into Torah. However, we have to realize that Torah isn't necessarily a consequence of all of our efforts. That it's a mitzvah me'es Hashem. It's still at the end of the day, anything like this, like Torah kedusha, always comes from Hashem, regardless of our efforts. But we still have to put in the effort to get there. But that's the idea of Yagati Mitzasi. So, so now what he wants to do is now apply this to, let's try to do a deeper dive into Al Hanisim and try to understand it a little bit better. So he says, Benusach Tfilas Al Hanisim, Tiaru Lenu Chazal es Mahalech Amoros ve'es Yeshuas Hashem. Nomad Gam Misham es Yesod Shabiyarno. He says that this is the construct of it. Chazal is really are putting it together, or put it together in a way that really sort of fits with what he was just explaining. So at first this is Bibei Matasio ben Yochanan Nizkir Chazal Gam es Shem Aviv Mashem Kim Bimei Mordechai ve'Esther. Interesting that by Hanukah we say Bimei Matasyahu and not Yehuda and all the other brothers, but in the name of the father Matasyahu, which is not. But Mordechai and Esther, we don't see that important. And here you have these very weak soldiers, I guess lack of a better word, soldiers who are going up against a very strong and very well-armed, empire. That has legions of soldiers. And in order to be Mekadosh Shem Shemaim and really show where the Yeshua comes from, but we also have to realize there was a lot of Mesiras Nefesh on Matisyahu and all of his children, and some of them were killed in the battles. Tolu Chazal as a nitzchon as a Yeshua b'Hashem. But Chazal say that the victory was all these, being saved by Hashem. And he says, how do we say it? You stood them there in the times of their tsaros. Ravta es rivam, danta es dina, mesarta giborim biyad chalashim, ulekach asisa. Sorry, ulecha asisa, la'amcha asisa tshua. Virak lebesaf ka'asher meduber al. So when we're talking about all of the efforts in the war, it's all about Hashem. Ravtas Rivam, you were the one, Hashem. Dantas Dinam, Masarta Giborim, right? That Hashem handed over the mighty into the hands of the weaker. But only when we're talking about returning the Avoda of the Beis Hamikdash, that's when Chazal talk about the Chashmonaim. It says, Finu as Heichol Lecho, they emptied out the Heichol, Vitaras Mikdashecha, and they're metaher the whole thing. And they lit the candles. So there we're talking about that the Chashmonaim did it. But when we're talking about the battles, that was all about Hashem. Okay, so these are all sort of just questions, and he's going to come back and then answer them. All right. Masarta giborim afilu biyad chalashim rabim afilu biyad ma'atim utmeim biyad bigla shahayu taharim rishoyim biyad bigla shahayu tzadikim v'chule lechora ein chamisha zedvarim hamitzuyonim be'al hanisim shavim. So he says that if we look at it, there's two different things going on. It says b'shnei rishonim hakavana hi sheyeshua ba afilu biyad chalashim u'ma'atim. That it's Mesarta Gibarim Afilu Biyad the Chalashim, that the mighty are handed over to the weak, and that the many are handed over to the few. So that's really sort of Afilu, that even though they were not, in terms of physicality, they weren't really there, ready to win. Afilu hachi, they were still handed over. V'ilu hashar mahavim siba dahainu bigla shahayu taharim tzadikim v'chulei. But when we talk about the Tmein, they're handed over to Harim, it's not afilu, it's biglal, right? That Hashem put the impure into or allowed the pure to destroy the impure, but that was because they were, or the Rishaim, because they were tzaddikim, that's why the Rishaim were handed over to the tzaddikim. So it's because of. So there's two different things that are going on in this same list. So Nasan Hashem lahem es nitzchon. Ach, ein davar kach, elagam shnei rishonim chalashim umaatim heim siba lenitzchon. Kemosha tzaddikim v'toharim. And he says that no, it's it really is all the same thing, meaning that Hashem was doing this purposefully to hand over the mighty, even though they're being handed over into the hands of the weak or into the hands of the few. It's all the same thing, that it's because of and not a few. Okay. So then he says that let's go into this a little bit deeper now. So what he's really showing us is the amount of effort we put in. It doesn't necessarily mean the Yeshua, and that's what we saw with the war. That Hashem is saying that our efforts, we were weak, we were few. We should not have won that war against this mighty empire, yet we did. And that's what we're saying in Al Hanisim, is but when it came to our Hishtadlus in getting back into the Beis HaMikdash, the Chashmonayim, the Kohanim, to get back into the Beis HaMikdash, that the Chazal actually mentioned that's them, because that's where your hishtadlus really means something, that you are trying to get back in and doing the avoda. That's where it really can take effect. Okay, we'll see how much further we can get today still. But he says that here we'll go a little bit quicker, maybe a little bit outside. But he talks about the idea that again, he mentioned this above, that Matisyahu is mentioned in Al Hanisim, but by Mordechai and Esther, they're mentioned themselves, not by so a father or somebody else. And he says that we have to understand that Matisyahu, why Matisyahu? Why is he being mentioned specifically? So he quotes the Pri Tzaddik that describes that our person's name, it's certainly these days, the person's name explains what sort of the essence of them. That by Matisyahu, it's Metes Yud Kei Vav. That it's Matisyahu means that it's being given from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Yochanan is Yud Vav Chanan, that Hashem is providing. And the reason why he's pointing out Yochanan is, we're going to say that's also the Chashmonai, but he's also talking about and now bridging it over to Rabbi Chanina ben Dosa, which is very, very similar to Yochanan. Chanina and Yochanan, very similar names. Also, the same idea that Chanina ben Dosa, we know that sort of lived through revealed miracles. The famous story of his daughter pouring the vinegar into the Ner Shabbos, and then lights it and says, "Oh no, I've done something terrible." And Rabbi Chanina ben Dosa says, "Why?" He says, "The same HaKadosh Baruch Hu who can make oil burn can also make vinegar burn. What's the difference?" And the idea being that once we realize that Teva is also a nace, it's just a nace that we're used to. It's just the rules of how Hashem has created the world. But that's no less of a miracle. That's what we learn from Rabbi Chanina ben Dosa. So I'm going to skip a little bit and we'll try to finish off. Okay, yeah, so we'll jump back into it here. So it says, Madrega Zu, Shel Rabbi Chanina ben Dosa, Haisa Madregas Matisyahu Vanov. And he says that's really, that's why Matisyahu is being called out here, is because that Madrega of Rabbi Chanina ben Dosa, that everything in life that we see all around us, everything that's going on, is all miracles. It's all from Hashem. That was also the Madrega of Matisyahu and his children. Just like we saw above, the Pri Tzaddik, that's the essence of Matisyahu is very similar to the essence of Rabbi Chanina ben Dosa. Everything that we have, all the successes we have in life, come from Hashem. L'chein hoku b'mesiras nefesh Ma'atim neged rabim v'yatzu l'milchama she'al pi kol klalei hagion v'derech tova nirasa chasar sikoy. And he says that's the mindset that is required in order for the Chashmonayim to say, you know what, we're going to start a war with the Yevanim. Like, nobody looking at that probably. I mean, a lot of people are probably laughing at them or saying, "What are you thinking? Are you crazy? You can't go up against the Yevanim." But that's the sort of mindset, in essence, that you have to have in order to do so. To say, what's the difference? We could have the most mighty army in the world, or we could be weak and have no armaments of our own. Either way, we can go up against the Yevanim and we can be victorious. So move on it. Hetev nusach al anisim. So that's how we understand al anisim. Rabim biad mi'atim who kamashmas rishayim biad tzadikim. It's the same thing when we're talking about the many into the hands of the few, or when we're talking about the evil ones into the hands of the tzadikim. Just like the fact that they were tzaddikim is the reason why the Rishonim are handed over to them. Same thing, that's why the many were handed over to the few, because they were few. They knew, they realized that they were weak and they were few. And they knew that their victory would not be contingent on their own abilities and their own might. And that's why Hashem saved us. All right, I think we do have to stop here. We got, but we did get several more pages into it, and hopefully this is something that's insightful for all of us as we start to think about just how, I guess real quick, recap is just the amount of depth that's really there in Al Hanisim, and really understanding what is the difference between the Nes of the Shemin versus the Nisim that happened in the war. And we'll see he's going to go further into that, really sort of comparing and contrasting these different Nisim and how they're mentioned and how we approach that as we continue looking into Hanukah. So with that, everyone should have a good Chodesh and a good Shabbos, and we'll continue this next time.